Hello class, today I will be speaking to you about safety related to alcohol, drugs, and other substances. My name is Sierra Elston and I'm the coordinator of wellness education for the William Magee Center for AOD and Wellness Education. And before I dive into discussing substance safety, I'm going to go over a brief introduction of what work we do and how we define wellness. So the William Magee Center for AOD and Wellness Education is rooted in deeply caring about students, their well-being during their collegiate experience, and setting them up for a lifetime of wellness. We care, and that's why our core mission at the William Magee Center for AOD and Wellness Education is changing and improving lives through education, research, and support related to alcohol and other drugs and holistic well-being. Improving student lives through education has been our goal since we were first founded. And our center really came into being to help support students in need of substance education and to support them through their journey of recovery. This video discusses William Magee's story and will give you more insight into how our work began.
There were these warning signs that none of us put together. But now when we look back, these were all there the freshman year. And it just breaks our heart that we couldn't put all those together.
I ran into a friend of William's, a classmate. He had not heard that William had passed. I said, he passed away from an accidental drug overdose. His words were, I just cannot believe this. He said, he seemed like such a good guy. And I, was just taken back. And I said, he was a good guy. He was a great guy. And this can happen to great guys. It happened to a great guy.
William was a good guy. He was a great guy. And I think that's a really important point to make, that this happens to anybody. And William was a great guy, and that doesn't mean that he's immune to the perils of addiction.
Parents and society as a whole need to realize that in today's world and the technology that we have, the mobile technology, it's very common for young people to compartmentalize their life.
He really was everything that you would want in a son. I think that missing piece, he had just a bit of anxiety, and that was the connection that he had with alcohol and drugs. When he was first exposed to it, I perceived that he kind of made him in with the cool crowd and just took away a little of that anxiety. And, it's just as it escalates from one thing's okay, then the next thing, he just came to the point then that he couldn't step away from it. But all the time, until the very end, totally managed being on an SEC sports team, in the Croft Institute and the Honors College, keeping up a high GPA, active in fraternity, had a girlfriend, it was just very, he really juggled a lot of balls for a while until he couldn't.
Institutions of higher education, whether that be Ole Miss or anywhere else, we continue to struggle with alcohol and other drugs. Students continue to struggle. Some of that is, mental health issues and the escalation of and identification of those issues. Some of it's the age range of these students. Some of it is transition to college and dealing with freedom. Some of it's access to drugs. There are a lot of different variables that basically accumulate as students enter into the collegiate environment that we've continued to struggle with as institutions of higher education.
David has an obvious passion to prevent another family from going through what he and his surviving kids have gone through with William. So for the past year or so, I've been trying to help him succeed and help Ole Miss get proactive in setting up a program to intervene and identify students who need help, and maybe remove some of the stigma that prevents many of them from asking for help.
Students today tell me we don't always know how to recognize when someone is struggling. And I think that's the real point of this center and why this is so needed. It's that education, frankly, that we as parents needed.
For me, we're we're family. We talk about that a lot, and families take care of one another. You know, when I'm hearing this story and the passion from Kent and David about, you know, what they went through, what the experience was for them and for William, it made sense that we needed to tell this story. We needed to talk about this more. So a good family talks about their problems and talks about the issues. And I felt that it was important that we deal with that more head on. And now we're going to have this center with this name on it, and we'll be able to continue to tell that story over and over again in a way that students, I think, will identify with it. Then they're able to open up and talk to some peers about those challenges and have a center where they can go and engage with others and say, look, this is, you know, of course this is a challenge. Let's talk about it and let's get you the support early versus, you know, allowing you to continue to struggle and get into bigger issues.
The student wellness is so important, and alcohol and drug education is an important part of that. We have to put this out in the open and have this discussion to break that stigma so that these kind of conversations are comfortable. This is a step forward for the university to say, we care about our students and we want to be cutting edge nationally in how we care for them. That's a big moment.
All right, and it is important to note that we provide services and assistance to any student struggling with substance use, and I do encourage you to reach out to us if you need help. So how do we define wellness? Well, according to the World Health Organization, wellness is defined as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The William Magee Center for AOD and Wellness Education recognizes 10 different dimensions of wellness that you see here with their corresponding WE or Wellness Education logo. These include physical, mental, sexual, financial, cultural, social, intellectual, spiritual, environmental, and occupational wellness. Today we'll be discussing alcohol and other drugs and how these can impact your personal wellness in many ways. So here at the University of Mississippi, we have policies in place to ensure the safety of all students. And if these policies are not followed, students will be held accountable for their actions. Reaching out to the Office of Conflict Resolution and Student Conduct can help answer any questions you may have, so do not be afraid to reach out to their office to learn more about these policies and laws. Students who are under 21 are prohibited from drinking. These sanctions are determined by the Office of Conflict Resolution and Student Conduct. And the goal of these sanctions is to emphasize the balance for the health, safety, and well-being of the individual and the community. The more sanctions you receive while you're on probation, the greater the likelihood of a suspension or expulsion grows. We have a medical amnesty policy, and this is not a punishment, and we do encourage you to seek help for your fellow peers if they're ever in a crisis involving substance use. But it is important to know that if you take advantage of this policy, that you still must participate in the educational component. And then finally, it's worth noting that the University of Mississippi is a smoke-free campus, meaning no tobacco products, no e-cigarettes, cigarettes, vapors, etc. Though we have these policies in place at the university, we do know that students are still going to face certain things during their college tenure. So let's dive a little deeper into what the statistics say about college students. So here we have some recent statistics regarding alcohol across the nation for traditional college-age students. One is that alcohol use is the third leading cause of preventable deaths. In 2015, college students age 18 to 22 reported 10% higher for drinking than those of the same age who weren't in college. And then 20% of students meet the criteria for an alcohol use disorder. So as you can see, students at Ole Miss are at risk for facing major consequences from their own drinking behaviors. And I think it's important to highlight some of the consequences from drinking, but then also to highlight how you can avoid these consequences with protective behaviors. So I will give you a second just to glance at the negative consequences below. And then just take a moment to identify 3 behaviors on the right side of the slide that you could easily use to keep yourself safe. So now that we've discussed peer pressure, let's talk about common substances that you may come across during your time at Ole Miss. The first one is marijuana, which is also known as weed, pot, kush, or green. And this substance is the most commonly used illicit drug in the United States. It may impair thinking, memory, and learning functions and affect how the brain builds connections between the areas necessary for these functions. And it's important to note that it is illegal in the state of Mississippi for both recreational and medicinal use. Next, we have Adderall, which is also known as speed, Addy, smart pills, or uppers. And this substance can cause kidney damage, insomnia, and intranasal damage from snorting it with long-term abuse. Next, we have cocaine, which is also known as blow, coke, doing a line, or snow. And this substance places people at a higher risk for contracting HIV through the sharing of needles. And people who use this substance are also at a greater risk for overdosing, which can lead to death. And then last, we have Xanax, which is also known as bars, bricks, benzos, and planks. And this substance is the most commonly prescribed benzo in the United States. And the mixing of this substance with opioids can cause deep sedation, respiratory depression, coma, and ultimately death. So although the use of substances is illegal, we are aware that it still happens. And if you have a friend who might be continuing to buy or use these substances, you might want to offer them suggestions around protective behaviors. Some protective behaviors you may want to discuss with them include being in a safe place. So just ask them if something bad were to happen, are they in a place where others can help them? To inform them of not mixing substances, and just discuss that there's no way of telling how their body will react to mixing substances that are not intended to combine. And then to also be aware of what they are using and ask them to consider that not everyone will be honest about what is being sold to them and that they need to be extremely careful. And then to avoid buying or selling, meaning not to put themselves in a situation where you're caught selling or buying, as it heightens your risk of severe charges from the police. So your responsibility does not end at taking care of yourself, and you also need to take steps to become an active bystander and look after your peers. This means that when you see problematic behavior, you need to be prepared to step in and help by following the steps below. An active bystander notices that the problematic behavior is occurring or about to occur. They decide to take responsibility and intervene. They are aware of what they can do to help in that situation. And then finally, they take action. Now, that final step of taking action is not always as easy as you might think. And just take a look at this behavior to see the bystander effect in action and to learn why it is such a common behavior.
Imagine you're in a huge crowd of people walking down a busy street. You see a person fall to the ground nearby. Would you help? Though most people instinctively say, yes, of course I'd help someone in need, research in social psychology tells a different story. More specifically, research suggests that when you're in a group, you're less likely to help. And research goes further to state that with each person added to the group, individuals feel less inclined to take action. This is known as the bystander effect. And the bystander effect essentially states that an individual may feel less inclined to take action because of the presence of others in the group. So why does this happen? Well, let's break down why people in a large group might not help someone who's unconscious. Well, one reason might be lack of medical knowledge or experience in assisting people who are unconscious. Maybe there is one individual in the group with a little bit of medical knowledge. For instance, maybe they learned how to perform CPR a few years ago, but that person might defer the responsibility to someone else in the group, assuming that with such a large group of people, certainly there's someone here with much more experience in dealing with an unconscious patient. The irony, however, is even though they might not be the most experienced in the group, their limited experience in assistance, even just calling 911, would help much more than waiting around for someone else to intervene. So this concept is coined the diffusion of responsibility theory, and that helps to explain the bystander effect. So the diffusion of responsibility theory says that when individuals are in the presence of others, they feel less personal responsibility and are less likely to take action when in a situation where help is needed. Again, the bystander effect is amplified by the amount of people in the group. Now remember the inverse relationship. The more people in the group, the less inclined an individual is to take action. So if you were to collapse unconscious in the presence of a small group, there would be less of a chance of a bystander effect. So if we shrunk this group down to only a few people, it is very likely that people would be more inclined to take action and try to help you. So remember our bystander with the limited medical experience who deferred to someone with more experience? Well, in our new small group situation, he might quickly realize he's the only one who's ever practiced CPR before, so he would probably be more inclined to intervene. The small group also helps to diminish the diffusion of responsibility theory from taking effect because the individuals in the small group probably feel more personal responsibility to intervene. So if this guy took action and noted you had a pulse and were breathing spontaneously, then maybe you call 911 and the EMS would arrive to bring you to the emergency room for evaluation. So in this case, medical knowledge wasn't even necessary, or at least performing CPR wasn't even necessary. Someone simply just had to call 911 to address the situation. So this happened in a small group, but in a large group, the bystander effect has a greater effect and can lead to very little happening by any one individual. One of the most famous examples used to illustrate the bystander effect is the sad story of Kitty Genovese, who was a 28-year-old woman living in New York City who was stabbed, raped, and robbed while around 38 people were in the vicinity. And what's worse was that this horrific attack spanned over half an hour, with the victim pleading for help and the attacker returning and ultimately killing her. When some of the possible 38 witnesses were interviewed later, many of them said that they didn't directly take action because there were so many other people present in the vicinity. So while it's understandable that a bystander might be afraid to step in and fight a man with a knife, somebody certainly could have went to a phone and called the police. Especially since this lasted for half an hour, there would have been plenty of time for the police to arrive, and that would have possibly saved her life. Now, the bystander effect isn't the only scary phenomenon that can happen when large groups of people get together. Another issue that can come up with crowds is de-individuation, which is a phenomenon in which individuals in a group are more likely to act impulsively.
I'm going to stop us there. That video provides a fantastic description of just the general idea of the bystander effect. And now that you've had an opportunity to see the bystander effect in action, just keep this information in the back of your mind if you're ever in a situation that requires you to step up and act as an active bystander. And just remember that you could be the active bystander that helps save someone's life. So as college students, the use of all types of substances for various reasons can occur, but it's important to remember that there are several negative consequences that can occur after using those substances. Drug overdosing and death can occur when students use prescription drugs and other substances. And if you notice any of the following signs or symptoms from your friends or classmates, it may be an indication that they have a drug problem and you should redirect them to resources. So here we have some indicators for addictive substance use behaviors. Some very obvious signs would be signs such as a loss of control, neglecting other activities, heightened risk-taking, relationship issues, and secrecy. But some other more subtle changes that you may notice just among your friends, family, based on their personality would be things along the lines of tolerance, withdrawals occurring, continued use despite negative consequences if you're around them frequently enough to notice. And then other factors as well, such as having a family history or a possibly long-term changing appearance may also be evident. So in line with signs of and symptoms of addiction, there is binge drinking, which is a dangerous drinking behavior that can be a very visible sign of addiction. Binge drinking affects the entire campus and community and is responsible for numerous consequences that you see here. 1,825 alcohol-related injuries that were unintended, 6,906 assaults caused by students who've been drinking, and 97,000 sexual assaults or date rapes caused by students who've been drinking. For men, binge drinking is defined as drinking 5 or more drinks in one sitting or drinking 15 or more times per week. And that's defined as just one serving of alcohol in those 5 drinks or 15 per week. And then for women, binge drinking equates with drinking 4 or more standard drinks in one sitting or drinking 8 or more standard drinks per week. So whether you or someone you know needs help with alcohol or drug use, please reach out and take advantage of the campus resources that are available. These resources are provided judgment-free to help all students who need it. And then just always remember that there's no shame in reaching out for help. I'll give you a second just to take a look at the resources available on campus. All right, we have some exciting things happening year-round, and if you're looking for an on-campus job, interested in booking a wellness consultation to discuss substance safety in depth with our department, or if you're just looking for more information, make sure to visit our website at mcgee.olemiss.edu, and then follow us on social media at McGee Center 1 to keep up. So thank you for listening and participating in today's lesson. I hope you learned something that you can use and share with your friends. And then if you have any questions regarding substance safety, again, please feel free to contact us at wellnessedu@olemiss.edu or to stop by our office, the William Magee Center for AOD and Wellness Education. We're located within the South Campus Recreation Center, which is just about a mile from campus.